This is the Shattering the Taboo podcast. Let's change the paradigm together with your host, Bebe Chez.
Welcome everyone. It's a beautiful Tuesday evening. Full moon, I believe, is tomorrow night. Very excited about that. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we get started, I want to just do a quick intro for our guest this evening. Our guest this evening, Doc Cons, Bebe Chez, also known as Dr. Ramos. He's a neuroscientist, author, stress specialist, and yoga master. He is a teacher, not a speaker, with a powerful voice in the mental health field and an advocate of reconnecting with nature to reestablish healthy and harmony, not just in ourselves, but also in the ecosystem. He's currently the founder and the owner of Rama-Rooted Tree Design to help others find a path to true healing through his unique and conscious DNA reprogramming blueprint that is a part of his 66-day program and a fascinating DNA hacker mastermind. With that, I want to welcome Dr. Cons, Bebe Chez. Welcome, brother. How are you tonight?
Good. That may be a little outdated. I've evolved. Rama-Rooted Tree started with another concept, and then it was mostly like a life health coaching, which I'm trying to do in this space. But now I'm like, I think 100% devoted to the NFT space and to provide these novel concepts that, I mean, I wouldn't say they're novel, but I guess they're novel for some people, most people. But I've been working on for like 2 decades. And I think the topic of today is like right up my alley. Even the way that the
amazing
title that you picked it, you
100%.
put it like,
just to give people some context, I was in a Twitter Spaces naturally, and I heard Dr. Ramos speaking, and immediately when you mentioned that reestablishing a healthy and harmonious way of living with self and reconnecting to the ecosystem, immediately like my ears perked up, and I had to reach out to you and learn a little bit more about how you do that, because with the community that we have, the SunGens, that's essentially our ethos. Really encouraging people to understand that self-care and mental health is also self-care and earth health, right? And so maybe we can start there, and you can kind of give us a starting point to understand how we can implement some of the things that you've discovered into our daily living.
Yeah, I'll give like today we can do like a little intro to what will likely be some sort of workshop in the future. So like I have open here, as you were talking, I just gave to the right, and I had a presentation that I've given before on. It's titled Doshas and Nature. Doshas is like an Ayurvedic concept. It's like everybody has a certain energetic constitution, a certain way they vibrate, and that influences their metabolism, their psychology, the way that they interact with their DNA. It's a very varied. It relates to, the DNA hacker concept that we're going to talk about 2 concepts that I developed. I think that they are a cutting edge in the sense that there's very little work done in this field. It does relate to existing fields like epigenetics, for example. And remind me, I don't know if you were the one or somebody else in that audience that day. There was somebody had a degree in some sort of like biological environmental kind of degree. And so there is work done, but there's not enough conversation or research yet for people to really make it a part of their life. And I think that this is one of those big mega trends that people can't ignore, because we're moving into an era where we will start to prioritize our own self-care and wellness. And those that are out there doing that type of work, teaching people to do this, are going to be very valuable. And so the title of this, and then I'll let you respond, is that we can harmonize our energy and our constitution by getting in sync with nature. And so I go through and I explain how you go about doing this. And we can give like a short little intro on that today.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I'll say, like, for me, right? Um, it's been kind of like a learning process and an awakening process, if you will, and it's still, and I'm still learning. And I think the most important thing is to have the desire to change and integrate and be better. And part of what we're doing with the SunGens is really an educational component of that, right? So that it's not just information, but then integration, right? So
Exactly.
we can take that as, like, a jumping off point, if you will.
Yeah, like I tell students all the time when I teach and I do lectures and events, it's information or education without integration. There's nothing. You're not really learning if you don't integrate and you don't put it into practice. And so I've been discussing this idea that we are space, we're emptiness. And you don't discover that until you get to the depths of your being by developing an advanced meditation practice. And when you discover that you are empty in a space like the sky above you, we realize that we are unconditional love in our nature. We should allow anything to manifest without rejection or clinging. And so I've worked really hard to take my space of consciousness and embed it and fill it with as much good stuff as I can. Not to enrich myself, but to make myself an asset to be able to better serve. And I remember years ago, I would always start, before I would do any practice or sit down to meditate, I would always ask for that. I would always be like, make this body, this mind, this vehicle a perfect expression. I want to be able to, serve more. I want to be in a position where I can really inspire generations. And so the whole concept of eco-wellness is around that. And the way that I started to realize this was by studying ancient civilizations. And we often think of as ancient, evolution as being linear, where we're going from more primitive to more advanced. But in fact, everything in life is cyclical, including the rise and fall of civilizations, and evolution is cyclical. There have been humans very advanced, and from my calculations, I'm not going to get into the numbers tonight, but from my calculations, we have had peaks of human civilization over 1,000 times on this earth. And so there is a lot of rich history that most people don't know exists on the planet. And so I started to discover how these humans used to live, how they respected nature, which you see in some traditions, particularly indigenous traditions, and how they related to nature. I started to discover that nature is actually technology, that there is embedded math and geometry that's very beneficial for us. And so at some point, maybe tonight or in a future workshop, we can talk about concepts like forest bathing that were started in places like Japan, because we've started to find that our contact with nature was extremely important. And so later on, if you're interested, we can also discuss how this relates to our financial system and our governmental system, our system of law, and how it's so far removed from natural law and free markets, and therefore has disrupted the cycles of nature. And we've actually negatively impacted the planet because of this. This in turn has thrown humanity into a phase of immense pain and suffering, a lot of disease, both mental, physical, and spiritual. And therefore, we have to reclaim this. Humans, their divine right is to roam the earth freely with soil that is rich and verdant with life. Man-made gardens that took so long to build, like the Amazon rainforest, which is a man-made garden, with soil that we can't even recreate because it's so advanced, is being destroyed. The same thing with coral reefs. And so it's it's difficult to observe all of this, but without us really starting to gain conscious awareness of the problems that are in this planet, we won't ever do anything to change. And it's not about changing somebody else, it's about changing yourself. It's about becoming a role model that is able to transform first yourself, and then you become like the sun that by its own light is able to transform the surrounding environment. And so it's as I started to study this ancient civilization, not only did I realize that nature was intelligent design, that it had embedded technology and math that's embedded into us as well, but I also realized that they took it to another level, which is they went beyond the earth and nature and they integrated the cosmos itself. And that's something that I am still on the working phases of. It goes beyond EcoWellness. I don't know what I would call that, maybe Cosmo Wellness, but it's a concept that is a lot more far reaching. And I've only been able to experience it in deep practices and in communion with very advanced masters that have gotten to that level of evolution. And we're at the dawn of a very interesting time. We are in a really revolutionary time with immense change occurring. And therefore, you're going to see like rapid shifts in consciousness. Unlike anything I've seen, maybe the equivalent could be two other phases, maybe the Renaissance and maybe the beginning of that early 1900s with the quantum modern physics revolution with Einstein and all those big brains. I think those were two big, really big shifts in consciousness. And now we're shifting into another era, and you're going to see a huge movement towards, I mean, I saw it in the Super Bowl, even the Super Bowl with the ads. If you were paying attention, you would see a lot of promoting of newer technologies and approaches.
Yeah, 100%. Um, listening to everything that you're saying, and the truth behind all of it. I often commute from New York City to where I live in the suburbs, and I'll say that simple things like some people call it earthing, some people call it grounding, but taking some time throughout the day to literally reconnect with nature and have dirt on skin, and you mentioned forest bathing as well. Um, I know there's a good amount of literature out there talking about, uh, you know, with forest bathing, that the different tones and hues of green are very important for our well-being. What are some things that we can let people know about that maybe they don't have access to a forest like I fortunately do, or things like that. What are some hacks that we could help people with?
Yeah, like you mentioned like grounding and dirt, and that's exactly, you're gonna love this particular workshop. I mean, it's probably gonna have to be broken up into multiple sections, it's a little bit longer, but it's actually we live kind of ungrounded and isolated. The shoes we wear, a lot of them have rubber insole, which do not conduct currents. And therefore, we're disconnected from the earth itself in a sense. It's almost like you're like levitating through life. And that disconnect from Mother Nature is it causes a lot of detriment in us. I forget the physician's name. I have the book somewhere here. And the book is called, there's two books. One of them is called The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv, Louv. And he talks about nature deficit disorder. I've talked about it as well. And I'm pretty sure he was deeply involved as well in the Boy Scouts of America. And it impacts both male and females, but you see this a lot more in males. And I know this personally from having been an educator for so long and work with a lot of youth. You see a lot more attention deficit and also autism spectrum disorders in males. And there's a connection between technology and our disconnect with nature and this process. It's creating really an unnatural neurochemical state in the brain. And the antidote to this is greater communion with nature, and two, learning about a certain natural rhythm. I don't really know anybody that teaches this other than maybe myself. And you'll really like it. It's a really cool concept of certain natural rhythms that the all of nature has. It's embedded in us, and we are completely out of sync. Most people are almost 100% out of sync with this natural rhythm. And so there are like many things that you can do to start reconnecting with nature. It almost has to become like the very fabric of the way that you live. And somebody came up as a speaker. I don't know if they had a question or comment, wanted to jump in. I forget who was. No? All right.
No, I think that was aspiring. Aspiring. Did you have anything or did you just want to come up?
I was just coming up for now. Please keep going. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you. Like my goal always when I do any event or especially spaces is to, and you'll notice this, it goes back to the idea of space. It's like it's like an artist of consciousness. It's taking people on a voyage and trying to take their consciousness and fill it up with so much richness and goodness that there's just nothing left to be put in there. It's like that perfect painting that you look at it and you can't think of anything to do with it because it's just right. Like Baby Bear's porridge. So let's see. You asked what things we can do, right?
Yeah, what can we do, for some of us who, may not be as fortunate as others who are very easy, have nature that's easily accessible to them, right? There's a lot of people who live in urban areas, where there's concrete everywhere, there's not trees everywhere, and even the air quality can be somewhat polluted. How can we help them find ways to receive the benefits of nature to help them with their wellness and increase their own climate consciousness?
Yes, yes. So we'll break it into a couple parts. We'll talk about some simple ways to integrate nature into your household. And in addition, I had a little section. I don't even know why I have it in my nutrition masterclass, but I think I was just teaching it and left it there. It's how to improve your EcoWellness. So these are options to fit into your lifestyle to align you more with Mother Nature. Again, it's all about resonance. What I teach is a very different perspective on who you are and how you can maintain, like an instrument, the like perfect harmony. You're like the perfectly tuned instrument that just vibrates at a higher frequency, so high that the low dense stuff of life, the denser stuff of disease and suffering and all that stuff can't touch you. And so some of that is aligning yourself with those cycles that I mentioned earlier, which I don't know if we'll cover it today because it requires some other background information. But it also involves your selection of products, how you set up your house, trying really consciously to minimize your negative impact. For example, I became really aware of what was going on in the marine ecosystem. And once I realized that we had, in essence, done away with more than 50% of marine life, I said I couldn't, continue as much as, fish used to be a good food and it's become increasingly more toxic. But I just couldn't continue to consume fish because I could see the impact that I was having if I kept doing it. There are, however, places that I have been to that the fish that they serve is conservational. It's almost like a weeding effect. And I think whole places like Whole Food will have products like this where I think we're going to have a shift towards this. And I don't know how sustainable it is from a financial standpoint because it may get to be a little bit too pricey. But the idea is that we've introduced into nature species that don't have competition. And therefore, by removing them or consuming them, it actually helps the environment. For example, here in Florida, they introduced the lionfish and it doesn't have any prey. And therefore, I mean, it's not a fish necessarily that people normally eat, but let's say it were, that would be a fish that would be one that would be helping the environment. So it's like getting educated and trying to do more. There's certain businesses that sprout up. I'm seeing like more IPOs spring up. Like for example, a company that I absolutely love, and you may want to write this down. This is not sponsorship. I don't get anything from this. I'm just saying it because I've used them and I like them. Is Blueland. They were, I think, on Shark Tank. And the way that they work is reducing the need for plastic. So you get your one container, your glass container, spray bottles, what have you, and they will give you like these little tablets of sprays for all surface cleaner, for bathroom, for like glass, stuff like that, even for washing your hands and doing the dishes. And you put the tablet in, you fill it up with water, and then it dissolves. And they have a whole bunch of other products, really great. Places that are springing up, like other companies like Grove that are promoting tree-free paper. So we're going to see a lot more of like bamboo products because bamboo grows a lot quicker, it's a lot more eco-friendly and very versatile. And therefore, you're going to see a lot more tree-free adaptations to products. Another thing in terms of that is taking towels and having them available. Like I see a lot of people, I go to people's houses and they have like a lot of paper towel and then they'll go dry. This kills me. This absolutely kills me. I went to this guy's house once and he just needed to dry his hands and he went around the roll of paper, grabbed like 5 or 6 of them and proceeded to just barely dab his hands and then throw it in the trash. And I'm there standing thinking, oh my goodness, what is this guy doing? So we're going to see also a push towards more plastic free. No reason why you shouldn't have a set of cloth bags. I have cloth bags from like 15, 20 years ago still that I've been using. So when I go to the supermarket and places, I bring the bags with me and I fill them up. And therefore, I'm not using that plastic. People have no clue the horrific problem the world has with plastic. If you go to these landfills, it's just abominable. If anything that is not cyclical is not in alignment with nature. Everything, absolutely everything in nature that is sustainable is cyclical.
No,
And
that's a great point. Actually wanted to just pause there
go ahead.
and kind of like dive a little bit more into that particular statement because I think that's an important point to understand around like how to make a shift towards more sustainable living. Like to your point, I used to be, I don't know if I was as bad as the gentleman that you described, but I used to use paper towels, to dry my hands and such. And so, we don't do that anymore in our house. We have cloth that we use now, and we use that and we wash it and we reuse it, right? So it's something that reduces our impact, right? And it's not about perfection as much as it's about understanding some fundamental concepts, like you just said, uh, about the cyclical nature of waste. And if you could dive a little bit more into that and just elaborate a little bit more on that concept, so that we could give like a good foundation of maybe even tonight we can walk away and look at our own home and say, okay, now that I understand that, here's one shift I can make.
Absolutely. It's a lot has to do with the financial system, the system that we put into place where we needed to accelerate and generate things much more rapidly than nature can provide. This is why the whole idea of business as usual and then assuming that we can just plant more trees is not really smart. And the reason why it's not is because even though trees are a renewable resource, they don't renew quick enough to meet the demand and the pace of modern living with the amount of humans that there are. We generated a debt based fiat system that was able to be inflated and manipulated for the benefit of the few, the ultra wealthy, or the people who knew how to play the game. Think of a Robert Kiyosaki, for example, who will talk about how this system benefits him, and when they print more money, he makes more money. And so what happened is that we created an artificial middle class that was able to consume more than nature is able to provide. And this created a really disastrous turn of events where now we have a deficit. And so we need to start getting more in alignment with having a system of law, of governance, as well as a financial system that respects the resources and the limits of nature. And therefore, if I were to run the numbers with all of you, even myself, as much as I try, I'm probably a little bit over one Earth if everybody lived like me. But most people are require, if everybody lived like most people, especially in the US, it would require 4 to 5 or 6 Earths. And we don't have 4 to 5 or 6 Earths of resources available. And therefore, we have to start to understand that we can't take stuff out of nature and create a product that now is like a dead end, that there's nothing that can break it down, or that it would take centuries before this product is broken down. And that's where the problem with, for example, plastic is. We lived for the longest time without plastic, and then all of a sudden, now we need plastic. Everybody plastic. And it's interesting how in the Super Bowl, Amazon had that ad of water in a can. I don't know if people watch the Super Bowl, but that kind of like got me going, because it's kind of like, oh, you're still pawning water, paying for water, when that's like, I can get that for free. But now you have it in a can because a can is better. So it's like, those are the things that we really have to start working on as a society, because every time that you look at, if I study, let's say, photosynthesis, within photosynthesis, there is a cycle, the Calvin cycle. If I look at the mitochondria, one of the organelles, my energy producing organelle in my cells, it also has a cycle. It has the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. And everything in nature is like that. It doesn't overproduce. It has built-in mechanisms to slow down so that it doesn't cause damage. So I always ask myself this question. I've studied nature for the longest time, and I was always wondering, why do humans have so many diseases? Why do they have so many problems? And the answer is very simple. It's because they override the natural tendency of our cells, of nature, to maintain harmony, balance, homeostasis. And we get into a state that we produce, that it opens the door to disease, because we overdo everything. It's like, I don't know, sometimes I've been driving, and all of a sudden some guy on a huge pickup truck, or my favorite, the Hummer, goes by like blazing fast and the light is red, and only to have to stop, and all they're doing is just burning more fuel. It's like everybody is in this rush, rush, rush. And I didn't realize that I was somewhat caught up with that when I was younger until in my early 20s, I went to Jamaica. And when I went to Jamaica, they have such a really different way of living. I don't know if everybody's been to Jamaica, but it's really beautiful. Like you go there, and I heard, I don't know how many times, Jamaicans go, slow down, relax. Why are you taking it so quickly? Why are you so hasty? Just chill, just relax, just enjoy
100%.
life. It's like enjoy the pace of life.
100%. Which reminds me, like, so my grandfather, a little bit about my background. My paternal side of the family is Bulgarian, and my grandfather immigrated here. And one of the first things that he did was set up a garden, in the backyard. Common practice in Bulgaria for neighbors to kind of have a garden set up, and one neighbor kind of, is a little bit more abundant on tomatoes, and another neighbor is a little bit more abundant on eggplant, and they're able to kind of share with one another, right? And when we would work in the garden, I would be, I think I was like 6 or 7, and I would be a typical 6 or 7 year old running around, doing this, doing that, and I never forgot this, and his voice still resonates in my head. Sometimes even when I get a little too, caught up in the game, if you will, in life, in capitalism, right? He used to say to me all the time, slow, 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 in broken English, right? Slow, 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 slow. And it wasn't until years later that it really just that I, sat with what it was that he was saying. And I remember in a breathwork session that I was doing that, I really heard the slow, slow, like loud and clear. Slow down, Alex. Exactly to what you're saying. And it's my own ability to override, my stopgaps that create the stress and the disease and the wasteful behavior, right?
Exactly. I think that this is the analogy that I often use is that river analogy. And it's like you're on a river. Let's say you're in the Amazon rainforest and you're in that Amazon river and you're just going through and you're just trying to go like at a million miles per hour. You're just really going, hitting that ore hard, burning all this energy, and you're working so hard that you don't notice the beautiful birds and the flora and all these life in the water. And you get to your destination, but now you're worn out, burnt out, stressed out for no reason, rather than just enjoy the journey. And what if it took you an extra day? But you got there with great peace of mind. You had some great experiences along the way. And that's the rush that we live in. We've created a culture, society where people are just going a million miles per hour, just trying to get where, sometimes nowhere, trying to make more money, more this, more that. We're a culture of do, do, do. And we don't learn how to just be, be. The art of non-doing is so important, and it's a skill that very few have. And I know when I wake up, my wife always tells me this, and I think I learned it from my dad. My dad had that ability. He kind of like never let kind of things accelerate him. He was, and he just kind of went about his day. He died at a relatively young age when I over 2 decades ago. I was very young when he passed away, and so that type of pattern, I see it in everyday life. I see my wife and she'll wake up and she's like, oh, I gotta go, go, go. And she just gets so worked up for no reason rather than just let things just manifest. And really, I always say this, why get from point A to point B and not enjoy the journey from point A to point B? And I remember as a kid, it's like the journey, like if I were to go on a trip, and let's say I was going to go to Disney, man, that day seemed like it lasted forever. I enjoyed every single second. I think that excitement of just like going to this new place and what have you. And then on the journey back, it was like lightning quick. I was like tuned out. I'm going back to home, and I couldn't care less. And it really illustrated to me that idea that everything in life is just a journey. And what really causes stress and disease is our resistance. So it goes back to that idea of why animals don't get the diseases like humans do, is because they don't put all the things, all the thought forms, all the emotions, which are tangible, real, energetic uh, forms that can impact us, impact our psyche in negative ways, and we constantly override these natural rhythms. And so we start getting ourselves out of alignment with nature. And then the farther away we are from our greatest role model, which is Mother Nature, the more we are out of sync. And it also goes towards higher ethical standards. It goes to this idea of unconditional love, because if you look at Mother Nature, she is designed to give without asking for anything in return. She is like a mother where she's holding a baby and the baby just bites off one finger and the mother just keeps holding the baby tight. I love you, baby. I love you. And the baby just bites another finger. And that's why I love The Giving Tree. And if anybody here has not read The Giving Tree, it's like a little kid's book. Or if you have young kids, get it and read it to them. It's a beautiful book that illustrates this concept as well of how we can model Mother Nature and really free ourselves from a lot of the constraints that we cause in our lives. We can just go about life almost effortless. And it gets to the point where you don't see any obstacles. Everything is just a natural flow of life. There's no good or bad, light or dark. I don't cling to this or reject that. I allow all sensory experience to flow through my being in the present moment. And when it's no longer there, I just let it go. I don't hold on to it in my memory. I don't cling to it. I don't worry about what's going to come in the future. I just live in the moment. And I live in the moment like if the love of my life were in front of me at all times. And if I live like that, I will always put forth my best effort. I will give my all, because if I'm in front of the love of my life, that's how I will live.
100%. And as I'm listening to you share that, I'd like to share how, what some of the things that came up in me that, are kind of indicative to a lot of the points that you're speaking to, is these systems and these narratives, right? So like listening to this abundant description of an everyday life where there's no pressure to perform, at a job, or it's okay to find more of a flow state to allow for a more natural form of productivity. There's some tension in my body listening to you speak that way, because there's a narrative that I'm aware of, but is so indoctrinated in my body and my subconscious around fear of this idea that if I'm not constantly getting after it and grinding and hustling and doing this and doing that, that this state of existence is almost a shameful state, where in fact it's more of a natural state. And so, you know, it's interesting to note and touch on that as well, that everything you're sharing is almost 100% obvious when you take the time to sit down and just pay attention. But because of these systems and the structures, and you talked about this a little bit earlier, the financial system and all of the mechanisms that are at play in our environment, we've created this unnatural environment that we exist in. And so it promotes disease, it promotes waste, it promotes all of the things that we really want to get away from, in a bright solar punk future. So thank you for, really shedding a lot of the light on that. And I hope what I just shared, kind of helps bridge a gap, towards taking some responsibility for ourselves and creating that space for us to reshape that narrative and usher in that brighter future.
Yeah, you touched upon an important point, which is that I think a lot of people have this concept that what I just described is less productive. People often think of relaxation and they think of somebody who's lazy, who's just laying back and not doing much. And in fact, it's the opposite. My peak performance is only possible if I am in a relaxed state. Absolutely nobody operates well grinding, stress, in overdrive. They may be able to push through and get certain things done, but they will never be as efficient as somebody who's relaxed, calm, and focused. This is how often people ask me, how do I do all the things that I do in a day? And it's because you develop a system where you're so present at every moment that you live more than other people. But at the same time, you age less. It's an interesting concept. I've done studies on this where if you're in line with yourself and with your dharma, you age slower. And so it's like the passage of time is skewed. Einstein showed this to be true. Time is not a linear; it can be bent and manipulated. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, and most people live with that ticker, that biological ticker, out of whack. And that's why that you I see people my age and they look like they're 15 years, 20 years older. They're like all broken down. It's so there's like this idea of like your actual age, when you were born, and then your kind of like real age. Like if you were to be tested, what would be your real age? And I started studying this very deeply and studying people who had mastered this, especially like yoga masters, Zen masters in Asia, how they had developed themselves, and age-wise, they did not have any of the. If you measured their physiology, their biochemistry, etc., you even by looking at them, they just did not look their age. And so the idea here is that the more we do this, the more we're in alignment, the more we're living free flowing, we turn. This is why I have a workshop that I teach where I go into turning stress into flow. Why? Because they're both the same chemistry, but one is kind of out of control, a lot of resistance, a lot of rejection of the present moment. The other one is completely absorbing yourself in the present moment, loving what you're doing at every moment, and you get into that flow state. There's no difference between them. They're both extremely powerful, extremely energy intensive. And so there's ways you have to go and design your life so that you have the reserve to be able to power that higher level of living, that higher kind of standard of peak performance. And it's all related to a shift in perspective. It's all internal. Once I let go and I allow life to just happen and I allow any experience, whether it's something that I feel I don't want for me, I just allow it in and I learn from it and I grow. And oftentimes we generate stress because of our own perspective. So, you know, it takes a certain shift and you have to build it into your way of being. It's not a magic pill. It's not an overnight thing. Everything has to have a strong base. People are just even related to this hastiness. We even have that hastiness built in us where we want that quick result. Everybody's looking for that next technological advancement or that next drug that is just going to come out on the market that's going to cure all ills. And there is nothing out there that will do that. It is something that you build into yourself, and that you radiate outwardly. Again, like the sun, like a fountain that's outwardly flowing and remains ever pure. unlike a sewage that only takes in and becomes rotten and spoiled. So maybe, do you want to elaborate on any of that? Does anybody have any comments, questions you want to come up just to make it a little bit more conversational? Because of course we can have other time to discuss, other stuff. I mean, I have stuff we could talk about in terms of city living, general stuff we could talk about. But if anybody has a question or
Yeah, I first of all just want to, say thank you for everything that you've already shared. But yes, I agree. If anybody would like to come up, feel free to request. We'll bring you up, and any value you might feel you might be able to add, or even if you just wanted to say thank you, or even just express an opinion on what's being shared this evening, please feel free. It's definitely an open space, and yeah, with that, you know, uh, man, where do we even go from here? Really, you know, I
by the way, I love the SunGens art. It's like they're like, you know what they remind me of? Something that I try to reinforce and I teach, which is to find your inner child. They all look like these really curious little children that are just happy and want to kind of like absorb knowledge and just take in the wisdom.
it's uh, it's something that we really were hoping to encapsulate, and the more that people express exactly as you have just now, the more it creates that resonance that we were talking about before. And you know, we mentioned that it's an ancient technology, but the body is able to create these resonant fields, and I think that it's captured in the artwork. And I think that the artwork really does allow for more vulnerability with self, and ultimately more vulnerability with behavior towards nature, and hopefully inspires that childlike nature to be able to be resilient and change relatively quickly and adapt to a quickly changing climate and natural environment. We to your point, like we're post we're post industrial revolution, right? And so our generation, or sets of generations that currently cohabitate on the planet, the future is not going to change, unless we host this resonance together and inspire action with one another and inspire our leaders to change some of the systems that we've inherited, not that none of us had any input in, and move that to a future where our our kin, our prosperity can, live as a SunGen, right? And I'm so optimistic about it that I do believe that in the next 30 to 40 years, and I talk about solar punk a little bit, but it's it's important to note the punk component of it, right? The punk component of it is that radical optimism, is that radical change. It is the kind of like fuck you, if you will, to the existing systems, to the existing ways of existence, right? We don't have to accept it. And it's only up to us, and it's only in our power. And we can only do this by creating this co resonance to change these things, right? And that's the punk and solar punk. Yeah, it's a bright future. Yeah, we all believe it and we've bought into it. But there's action, and there is a rejection of, current systems, right? There's another thing that is very important to note about the SunGens is that it's the egalitarianism, right? The idea that everybody has an opportunity equally, right? And that it's not something that we don't have to live in a world where, because of the color of your skin or because of your ethnic background or because of a particular border that you've been born within, that you're not privy to certain opportunities. Like, we don't have to live in that world. We're in Web3. Everybody knows it. It's in the NFT space or the blockchain space. Our community is already global, and I think one thing It's awesome. Every morning, when we say good morning, we're also saying good night to some of our community members across the world, particularly in Nepal, where climate is very apparent over there, right? And it's something to note that because we're able to span the globe using NFTs and creating a global community of like mind, we get to share real information with one another, not a piece of content, but actual word of mouth information, like real legit information. Like, hey, I'm living here in Nepal, and I can tell you firsthand, climate change is affecting me more than it might be affecting you on the other side of the world, and you're not aware of it because you don't live here. But because we can share this information and create these conversations, it allows for us to be empathetic towards our fellow human beings and not have to live with inside borders and create actual change. So thank you for pointing out the art, and
It,
spurring.
it opens. I have a couple ideas. We should meet with the team, and I had some like really interesting idea all of a sudden when you were talking, and I was looking at the art. I think I kind of found maybe a niche here that you guys could really hit. That I've talked about before. That it's like the next frontier that people haven't gone after. But I don't want to share anything right now, just so that let's keep it. I'll share that alpha in the Discord later. But I think you guys are gonna like it. I think I probably write it down before I forget it. Um, the other thing is you mentioned the thing about the punks, kind of like that. Giving the middle finger at establishment. I was just talking about that today because I'm wanting to find the avenue to really revolutionize education. And I was talking to this group that could be that avenue. And one of the things that I was thinking was that that's exactly what I want to do, is to develop a radical shift in how we learn, and that we make it fun, and also giving that middle finger to the established educational system that is based on this debt-based old fiat legacy system that's dying. And it's something that really, me as having children, it really hurts me when I know that I'm taking my kids to a school that is teaching them nothing that will make them successful in this world. And therefore, um, there's a need to really change the way we teach our children so that they can actually learn the things that are valuable, so that they can have all the things that we just started talking a little bit about today. They need to have those values built within them. And the other thing is the name is like perfect in the sense that we're producing a brighter generation, kind of like solar reflecting that kind of green angle, the sustainability, solar, sort of like solar panels, but also a brighter generation, a future generation of beings that are more radiant. And I've always said that the earth is a sun, it has light within it, and it's an evolving star. And just like we are a reflection of the cosmos, we also are an evolving star. And therefore, we have to let that light manifest. Most of us choose to live like coal rather than be resplendent diamonds. And that's the gift that I want to really leave before I'm done with this physical form that I have now, is to have people know that there's really nothing that they need to change other than the way that they go about accepting life, about the barriers and the resistance that they're putting to life itself. We often create our problems, or people around the society or our parents sometimes create those problems. I see that reflected all the time with mental health, where I've seen kids that become very dysfunctional as adults. Two individuals, same condition. One was accepted, the other one was not. The one that was not and was put all this pressure to change, to be this, to be that, couldn't make it. They become really severely affected. Their self-esteem their ability to accept and love themselves. And I think of this friend of mine, a really good friend of mine who went to Yale with me. He uh, he ended up being very successful, but growing up, he was bullied. He had Tourette's. He had attention deficit. Had a ton of problems. A lot of kind of the mental health side, that kind of like spectrum of the attention side. And his parents never said anything. They just kept treating him like nothing. They just let him kind of navigate through some of those bumps. And then when he got to college, where now, bullying wasn't like the thing, he got into a ton of fights just to make it when he was in high school. And then he became like 4.0 student. He was like the top in his class. Obviously, he got into Yale. He graduated really quickly, pretty quickly for most graduate students, and has been very successful in what he does. And so it's I think that there's a lot of potential here, and I'll discuss more in detail an idea that I have, just because of looking at the art. It just kind of triggers something in me. I think the aspiring. You want to say something? Aspiring.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you started touching on it a bit there. I just wanted to get your input on the importance of giving yourself like that grace and being able to forgive yourself, and going back to the point that you made when you were in Jamaica, when everyone was, like, hey, slow down, slow down. It's so easy, especially in America with the materialism, to get caught up with, FOMO in everything, not just in NFTs and crypto, but, the old adage, keeping up with the Joneses, that's really like FOMO back in the day, right? And being able to just have that presence with yourself, to slow down, to forgive yourself, to, in middle school, I wasn't like the cool kid. And so you have a lot of like, people pick on you or people say things, and it starts to form who you are, even though it's not who you are. So I wanted to just kind of get your input on that and your thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's actually very relevant. I mean, if I were to list the amount of things that I've done in my life that are absolutely shameful, we would be here like for days upon days. And I always say that for some reason we're taught. I talked about this, I don't know when, earlier today, maybe in earlier spaces, is we're taught not to try, that mistakes are wrong. I often work with younger kids, and they're like unwilling to give an answer because they're afraid to make a mistake, and they don't realize that mistake is your number one teacher. If you don't try, you don't learn. You only learn by doing and repeating and making that mistake. It's like when I wasn't necessarily physically gifted, but I ended up telling to myself, I saw this kid playing basketball. He was walking on a sidewalk, and he kept bouncing the ball between his legs as he walked. And I'm like, man, I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to be an all-star one day. I grew up in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, I'm going to be an all-star in this island. I'm one of the best players in the island. And I just did it. I set that intention and just did it. I didn't allow my circumstances to limit what I could or couldn't do. And oftentimes we have that. We have society or the school system or our parents or trauma or negative experience really kind of shut us down and determine who we are and what we were meant to do. And sometimes it takes a little bit of ignoring the noise. Like where I am now, people don't understand the journey that it took to get there. How many people tried to shut me down, to tell me I was wasting my time, that I got a degree from an Ivy League school and that was a waste of my time. And I just kept focused on a vision. At the end of the day, you have to do what you love. You have to discover why you're here on earth and what you're really meant to do. And what you're meant to do is not often what you end up doing. Because oftentimes we end up being a servant to a greater master. And I've never allowed myself to do that. I've never allowed a job or any situation dictate that, to throw me away from that vision. And so it's not easy, but at the end of the day, if I want to grow, if I want to become that sun, that radiant, resplendent sun, I have to turn around and look at myself deeply. I have to look back and look at what I've done and what have I built up till now. This is why in almost every, if not every, near-death experience where people have been clinically diagnosed as bodily dead, they have had a conscious experience. And what is the experience that they have? This recollection of all of these experiences, some of which they don't want to see. This is exactly very similar to what you have as well with this. If you go into like an isolation chamber, like a water chamber, or with psychedelics or other natural treatments that start to drop the barrier that we are always putting to ignore all the things that we carry with us, that if we just let go, we could be free. And we don't. We just keep carrying this baggage, and we just keep piling it on, and it just becomes a burden. And so it just takes being very skilled or working with somebody skillful that creates an environment that allows me to feel comfortable to open up and to start to let go of some of that, to really acknowledge, man, I've messed up. And now I need to start owning up to it and just kind of letting go of the garbage. It's fine. Everybody has. Nobody here, whoever says they haven't made a mistake or they haven't done something that they're ashamed of, most people have something that they may have not told anybody. And so that's absolutely fine. But at the end of the day, at least in my own intimate space, I need to start turning around and paying attention to that. And it begins by starting to become a master of the body and then a master of the mind, so that you can transcend both. Rest, sit. That is what really meditation means, is to sit and rest, is to become like this empty chalice that is then allowed to be filled by the inherent beauty that is already there, that you're not allowing yourself to be filled with because you're putting in all of this excess noise, all this other stuff, rather than just settle yourself, drop and withdraw from the senses, and start to go in and listen to the activity so that of your mind that doesn't allow you to really pay attention to the deeper you. And so as we go do this, it's almost like there's an element of purification, relating to all this eco-wellness stuff. I begin with me. I have to purify myself. I have to empty myself. And then I have to start looking at the outside world. And then I start to realize that all the things that I complain about the world are in me. I realized this at a very young age when I kept complaining about everything. And then I realized, holy crap, it's in me. It's me. Everything that I'm seeing is me. And then all of a sudden, once I started to focus on myself, all of the things that were bothersome then became irrelevant. It didn't bother me at all anymore. It didn't, I talk about environmental issues, a lot of serious issues that are going on throughout the world, human rights issues, human slavery still occurring. And I even see that here in the United States, and people don't realize that, how imprisoned some people live. And so, but it doesn't affect me. It doesn't cause this kind of ripple within me that just used to eat me alive before, because I was contributing to the problem. That's the whole idea with EcoWellness, is that for me, people don't consider ethics in the art of stress-free living. I talk about that. And I remember this one review, and it wasn't a positive one, on Amazon. This guy who clearly did not read the book, he focused on this one chapter where I started putting connections between ethics, diet, our choices, our life choices, and health. And it's very important to note that my high ethical fiber dictates my level of vibration. You are a disembodied being having an embodied experience. And as such, I am a more refined instrument than I think. The analogy that I make, and then I'll pause there for any questions or comments, is a fish tank with a fine rod inside the fish tank. Your consciousness is like a finger that hits that rod, and you're hitting the rod and you're generating vibrations that cause disruptions in the water. But if I'm angry, I cause a certain vibration that is a lot more chaotic and causes the water to really become very noisy at the surface. I can't, like, if I'm looking from above, I can't see deep within. And if there's any murkiness or muck in that fish tank, it's all going to get brought to the surface. And that's how we live. We have muck within us, and we're constantly agitating that muck to the surface of consciousness. And so we have to find a way to purify ourselves, to remove the muck, and then to find a way to perfectly tune that rod, like a tuning fork, that just generates the right frequency where the vibrations in the water are imperceptible. And therefore, this is also very important when it comes to my own body, is that your DNA is literally like strings of an instrument. They resonate and vibrate, and you are like the master, like the master conductor that is orchestrating all of the gene expression that is being produced by your DNA. What are you getting out of your DNA? Is it for health, well-being, power, or is it for something else? And oftentimes the way that we're thinking, what we put into our conscious space, our daily activities are conducive to the state that we so reject in our lives. We are the creators of that state, and we can start changing that by changing ourselves from within.
Absolutely amazing. I'll just say briefly, like I'm getting some messages on the back end here, and there's definitely a lot of resonance with everything that you've been sharing this evening. And I just want to say thank you again. Dr. Ramos, or how do you prefer, Dr. Ramos, or um, should I call you Bebe Chez?
Yeah, and it's fine. Whatever. Brian, Dr. Rama. Like the doctor is more for academic circles.
Sure. But I know
Bebe Chez.
a couple of SunGens have come up to the stage. So if
Sure.
you guys wanted to go ahead and pop in briefly. I also want to respect everybody's time. So we're a little over. So let's just be conscious of that as well. But anybody, please unmute and please share.
Yeah, we'll take questions or comments, and then we'll wrap it up.
Just dropping in, Bebe or Dr. Ramos. Just really want to say thank you for everything you touched on. Really resonates, and I'm from Puerto Rico as well, here right now, and it's always beautiful to hear just other men of color, especially people from Puerto Rico who are doing this work and sharing it. And also want to thank the SunGens community for bringing Bebe on and having these conversations. Appreciate you guys.
Damn it. You're in Puerto Rico, right?
Right now, yeah. I don't know if you can hear the coquis.
Yeah, I hear the coquis in the background. Oh, I missed that. Damn it. I missed those little suckers. It's like I grew up with that, and now here it's like, this is a beautiful concept. It goes back to the idea of technology. This nature was designed in a kind of, you're talking about holistic, artistic scientists, people that were able to do things in ways that we can only dream of. We're just beginning to start to delve a little in this. when they crafted nature, they didn't just craft it for eternal sustainability. For like, if you leave nature untouched, untarnished by man, it can last for all eternity. It just continues to produce. It's cyclical. Everything is renewable. It regenerates. It restores. It cleans. It's like it cleans and filters water. It does everything for free. It gives us food. It gives us material for building things, medicine, everything. And on top of that, it produces music and sounds that have been shown to elevate the mood, to shift our, reset our stress. It's just so many benefits, and people just ignore it. And there was this, I forget the name of this guy. I've talked about this before in other spaces. This guy who used to record nature, and he recorded it over, I think, decades. He started like in the 1950s, I want to say, or 60s. And I forget where in the United States. And you could see how over the course of decades, the deterioration of nature and the increase in all of these dissonant and incoherent sound emanating from cars and airplanes and all this stuff that we consider modern advancement, and in fact is just the complete opposite. So it's kind of beautiful. When you were talking, I was just kind of lost, trying to be very attentive to the little coquille in the background. For anybody who doesn't know, the coquille is like a little amphibian, like a little tiny little frog that only lives in Puerto Rico. You know, they've tried to move it to other places, but it doesn't really thrive well. And it makes a sound that sounds like, the name coquille if you like whistle it. I don't, I don't necessarily want to do the sound, but I used to imitate it a lot, like when I was in Puerto Rico.
We'll save that for the next one. I see, Miguel came up as well. Miguel, positive soul shaker. Did you have anything to add this evening?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Ramos, for sharing your, ultimately what it is the love that you have for, this world and each being, and every word that you shared exuded so much love. So I just want to say thank you so much for it. I mean, you are speaking my lingo when you talk about unconditional love, and I've been diving deep into myself for the past several years after a divorce, and it's just been every year I find myself going deeper and deeper within. I mean, even 2021 was a really challenging year, and coming out of it, I'm just like so blown away by another level of depth of the love that I have for myself, and it's just been a beautiful journey. And to hear you speak on it, and just the unconditional love we can cultivate within ourselves through easy and tangible practices, and practices that are just within our own backyard, how that can raise our vibration. It's great to hear that, and coming from someone else as well. So thank you so much for your love in this space. And I just want to say I love you, man. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. I've I don't know. I think I've gotten to a point where I think when I was younger, if I heard stuff like that, it would like touch a certain ripple in me that wasn't necessarily good. But I've worked really hard to dissolve ego such that now I hear that and I just focus on the other person and the love and whatever they're trying to express, and allow them to really shine. And it's always really nice to hear that. My goal is really always to bring a smile into somebody else. Like there's nothing that makes me happier than to see somebody else smile, and we don't do it often. People don't realize the health benefits of smiling and laughing, and we don't often do it. And this is why the Buddha is depicted like that. And if you master the art of being joyous, just bountiful, that you're bursting with laughter, no matter what the circumstance, even if it seems dark, people won't understand it. People may shun you and try to get you to stop. Never stop laughing and smiling. it's contagious, and the health benefits transcend anything that people currently realize.
Yeah, of course, man. A smile relaxes all the muscles in the
Exactly.
face, and it just exudes that energy. And you can really shift someone's day or mood by simply a beautiful, genuine smile that they may need, and you don't even know that they needed it.
Yeah, it's like the little SunGens here. They're all like, they look so freaking happy.
Yeah,
I'm
I
telling you,
got
there
I got
there
blue
is a
hair, so yeah.
there is a huge marketing avenue here that I'll share later privately. I just think that there's something really beautiful here that I want to share later on, that I think we should like consider a roadmap, into the roadmap, if you guys want to. I think it's just really brilliant. I just love the art, and I know how we could make this work.
Well, I want to say absolutely. And, we've been patiently holding our vibration and organically growing our community. And perhaps, the insights that have come this evening by way of you, perhaps are exactly the next steps. So I'm very much looking forward to having that conversation. I also want to take a quick moment just to let everybody know, this is most likely the first of several conversations with Dr. Ramos. I know there's been a lot of resonance this evening, and we also have a couple more spaces that we'll be hosting this week coming up with the Burnout Professor, who touches on a lot of similar wellness topics, and Kyle Buller from Psychedelics Today, who is going to be able to touch on the use of psychedelics to help reconnect us with nature as well. So we've got a couple more very well qualified individuals as Dr. Ramos to speak on a lot of the topics that we want to bring forward as the SunGens. So
Oh
again,
yeah, let me know. Tag me on those, because I'd love to,
100%,
just sit and listen to them. That's cool. I like those
100%,
topics.
100%. So again, thank you, bro. Like honestly, I didn't know we would go this deep, but it's been a pleasure. And guys, join our Discord. We'll keep the conversation going in there and inform everybody on what's going on. The mint is still in pre-sale, and there are opportunities to get on the pre-sale list for a price that's favorable to those who are still early. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close out the space this evening with the SunGens theme song. Any final words?
No, you know what I'm thinking? I want to talk to your artists and see if they can do like a Kong's version of my, like it looks like, with the little glasses, a little boy with the glasses, the yellow glasses,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
smiling.
100%. Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
we'll get we'll get them on a Discord call with us, and we'll make it happen.
cool. All right, let's get the music going.
Awesome,
Thank you,
brother.
people. Been a pleasure.